How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome to a snowy edition of the Doc and Jock podcast, cuz my cousin Adam the Jock Strozinski is in the building. Bro, it's snowing in April. What the hell is going on? When are we going to get some good weather?
This is what it does, man. Mother Nature is confused.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember it being like this, where we can't even get a baseball game off and running without it being canceled. My goodness, it's April. It's cold. It's snowy. We haven't hit 50 degrees yet, bro. Back in high school, I used to have tennis matches. Now, you know, the tennis season would kick off with practices in March, and then in April we would kick off with our series of matches. I could not imagine playing tennis in the snow. I'm just waiting. I'm thankful I'm 1 week away, 7 days away from a trek to Florida. I'll be on the sunny beaches. Finally, I guess I'm kind of hoping that you guys get all a bunch of snow and it stays like this so that I can be like, yes, I'm in Florida. But, man, a vacation's needed. But, man, this weather has been atrocious. It brings everybody down, and it's kind of made it hard to be a fan of baseball. It's been hard to kind of kick things off with sports. But, you know, in the end, I'm just waiting for really, I'm ready for spring to be here.
You're over this already.
I'm over this.
I'm over it too.
Aren't you, right?
Yeah, dude. If it could just get warm, if it could figure itself out, I think we'd all be much happier. I think your sinuses would be happier.
Yeah.
Your head cold would be happier. Everybody would be happier. I mean, just wish Mother Nature would get it together.
Yeah, I'm thinking, man, if we got to wait 2 more weeks, we've all waited since like November, and it's been like 5-6 months. One of those winters that we're all going to talk about, the winter of 2017, 2018. Holy cow, my goodness. Well, this podcast, we got a lot to get into. I'm excited. Some new things we're going to be talking about, and we're going to have an interview with somebody connected to eSports. I know that you're sitting there in your castle at home, and you're sitting there and you're like, I'm not going to do anything with the podcast. I'm not going to watch sports. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to play Madden. I'm going to play Fortnite. And I'm like, huh? No. I wish that you and I were both into the esports, but we have somebody on, Nate McClure. He's going to come tell us about an event that's going on in Detroit associated with the Detroit Sports Commission. So we'll have Nate McClure on as a special guest. We'll talk about the Michigan Wolverines, their flame out in the NCAA tournament final, the Tigers' early struggles, and always, we got to talk about the Detroit Lions as we inch ever so close to the NFL draft. But we're going to start with... Got to sit here, pat myself on the back again. By chance, did you know who won the DSP Listener Challenge? Cuz, do you know?
Yeah, I know, because I think everybody on Twitter knows too, because you told everybody.
1,000 times. And you know what made it great was the fact that next week, got to let you know, you put it on the sheet, Andrea will be the guest on the podcast because she finished second. She is technically the winner because I can't win the contest.
Well, this is what I wanted to bring up too, because it's like you hog all the mic time. You hog all the mic time on this network. So we and you started doing a show, and I had to fight you for mic time, right? So much so that we had to do a second show just so I could get my voice out there some more. On top of all that, we bring Jason and Vinny in to do a show. You end up running Vinny off, and then you start stealing all of Jason's mic time. And then we bring Vito in, and then you end up pushing Vito's brother around, so where he's hardly ever on the show anymore, and you steal his mic time. And then you win the listener challenge to steal all that person's mic time. What is going on with you?
Doc Sports Podcast Network.
Right, that's what the D stands for.
Duh. So it was great. Andrea was so mad. And I guess I'll start with this. I'll ask you, is it a violation in that the way I filled out the bracket was in the CBS bracket, you're allowed to kind of push, pick and choose. Like you could actually push a button and have Gary Parrish's or Seth Davis's bracket and it just shows up. So what I did was I picked the one, I didn't pick a specific writer's bracket. I picked the one that had like the mild upsets. And I picked it, and then I maneuvered it around because it didn't have Michigan and Villanova. So she's like, oh, that's a major violation. She even put on our Instagram, autocorrect invalid bracket. I'm like, no, I filled it out. I made a choice, and then I looked at the bracket, and I maneuvered it. And I had Villanova winning it, and I had them playing Michigan, whereas the autofill did not have that. It had something completely different. So I don't care. I did it that way. It took a lot less time, and it basically efforted a lot of my attention towards the Final Four and in. And that was the strategy I used. If you want to know what I did was I just, on CBS, just hit autofill. And then I maneuvered it to the teams that I thought could win it. And it's really important, really, in the end, in some of these bracket games, that you got to pick a lot of the Final Four teams correctly, and you got to pick the winner. And so you got 32 points for picking Villanova correctly. And so she was in first place from the first round on, and she had Michigan and Villanova in the final. But she had, bless her heart, she had Michigan, I had Villanova. I'm the wise one. She got second place, but we'll give her some airtime next week and have a little chat with her.
In the end, you only beat her by 11 points.
Exactly.
That's how much of a lead she had on you. You got 32 points for picking Villanova.
Yep.
I don't think that's a violation or
it's part of the
rules
game
infringement.
because everybody could do it.
Yeah, anybody can do that. So I don't think so.
She just wanted to invalidate it because she was getting the same nonsense like everyone else was via Twitter and all the texts. And she's like, Joe, don't think that you're that hot shit. You're nothing. You just pushed a button, whereas I picked all the stuff correctly from the beginning. That's why I was in first place. And I'm like, hey, listen, to each their own. You can take my trolling as any way you want. I validate that too. That's fine. But I just want to let everybody know that the guy who does cover college basketball actually is the best on the network and actually is the best among the listeners. And nobody's going to forget it. I was the best. I beat you, Jason Vito.
How many of those teams that you cover were actually in the NCAA tournament? One?
No, did I cover?
You covered the MSU game, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
one.
so we'll count that one, and that
Yep.
was in the tournament. So how many of those teams that you cover are
That's it.
actually?
Oh, you want to ask? Okay,
yeah, one.
I cover
One, that's right.
Horizon League
One.
basketball
That's right,
because
baby.
I'm humble. I'm humble. You start at the Horizon League. You
Because the
learn.
Big Ten won't give us credentials yet.
The Big Ten's like, who the hell is this idiot? They're like, wait a minute, who's that idiot standing next to Tom Izzo? Why is he asking all these questions? But
Plus, we have great connections with Oakland basketball and Detroit Mercy. So
Exactly.
But
Covers Horizon
give
League.
props to those guys. And you know what? It is good basketball. I don't care what anybody says.
It's
I
good
enjoy
basketball.
watching those guys play.
And you learn a lot because those coaches will share information and they share good information. And it's not like I'm the only one. Greg Campy shows up on Fox 2 a lot to break down things. The former head coach of Detroit Mercy, Bakari Alexander, was on Channel 4. So they break down basketball and they tell everybody what they're thinking about stuff. So I just want to let everybody know that I'm in the know in terms of college basketball and I can fill out tournament games correctly. And so, yay for me.
Mind you, girls pick winning brackets based on color and mascots, and
But
they end up getting championships too.
it does
But okay,
give us
cool.
it gives us
Cool,
credibility that at least the host won the listener challenge for the first time. That's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
You got to establish domination.
Tip your hat to you.
Yes, sir. You know who else we got to tip our hats to? Villanova. I think it was once you looked at their team and you saw what they were able to, put out there on the floor with Jay Wright and the fact that he's got a lot of talent. He's got not a lot of one and done talent. He's got a lot of red shirts. He's got a lot of individuals that have been in his system. You looked at it and you said, if Villanova just plays semi-decent, they're the team by and large that has the most talent. So I can't even hate on Michigan for getting blown out in the championship game. We all expected it. I think being that I'm not a Michigan supporter, I wasn't there at the bar rocking all the maize colors and being all that. I'm like, Villanova, it's going to be, I think that it would have taken Villanova to play their worst game, an F game. I think Villanova could have beat Michigan with a C game with the fact that, dude, DiVincenzo is a guy that comes off the bench and drops 31 points. A guy that is unheralded, a guy that averaged 10 points in a game in the season. He went out there and he lit up Michigan. And so you look at it and you say, wow, Villanova is the new IT program in the NCAA. I guess if you want to ask what went wrong for Michigan, great hot start. They just couldn't capitalize on some opportunities to take and extend the lead late in the first half. When Villanova made their run, that was a wrap. Villanova made some adjustments. It wasn't like that Villanova didn't do something to disrupt Michigan, but what happened was Villanova forced Michigan to do a lot of ISO, and then when the opportunity presented itself for Michigan to hit some shots, it just went astray, and Villanova just had too much. You had to play your A++ game to have a chance against Villanova, and it just didn't work out that way. There's no shame in it. There's nothing wrong with getting blown out by Villanova, who did that to everybody. They literally did that to everybody in 6 games, a rare time where a team goes through the entire tournament and wins it all. But all props to Michigan. They got there. They got the attention. I think that was the ceiling when you saw the bracket. I mean, look, an average podcaster like me put them in the final based on their bracket. But in order for them to get over the hump, they would have needed to do a lot more. You would have basically had to have heroic efforts from Wagner, from Matthews, from Muhammad Ali Rahman. You would have had to have overwhelming you would have to have everybody on that roster overachieve. So props to Michigan for getting to the final. And look, you played the best team in college basketball. No shame in losing.
I totally disagree with you. I think Michigan had enough to beat Villanova. They just played a C-level game. I think Villanova came out, and what it really boils down to is they had one guy that Michigan didn't have an answer to, and that's Dante DiVincenzo. And if you go back and you look at what this guy did throughout the course of the tournament, he ended up having the game of his life. He might not ever play this way ever again in college, but for one night, he was an unstoppable force on the floor. The guy put up 31 points in 37 minutes. If you look at the prior games that he played going into this game, he didn't average any more than, I think maybe like 13 points in the entire tournament. And the guy would sit there and he'd usually play right around 25 to 27 minutes a game here. And this guy just balled out. I mean, he was hitting three-pointers with two guys on him, like two guys up in his face and all up in his chest cavity. He would just sit there and pop up and just knock it down. Charles Matthews was going to slam the ball home. This guy got up so high in the air, got both hands up, and he blocked the jam. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is something you don't ever see. And like, he's not like he's a super tall guy. He's 6'5", right? He's just out there competing.
But now,
the guy had the game of his life, and Michigan didn't have an answer for him. I think that's what it really comes down to. If you look at the way Michigan played, overall, I think they played a pretty decent game, especially on defense, especially early on. They were forcing turnovers. They didn't have shots falling. I think what would have really helped this team a long way is if they had more of a pick-and-roll game, more of an inside-out game. Mo Wagner, when he was posting up, he was eating guys alive. And for some reason, John Beilein didn't want to go to that, didn't want to play that style of basketball. I think if this offense would have been able to dribble, penetrate, and utilize a pick and roll as well as Mo Wagner in the post, it'd have been a different story. But they didn't do that. They rely heavily on the three-pointer. That's what got them there, and that's what they defaulted to.
How disappointed are you that they did not take it down? Do you feel like it's really a wasted opportunity because really the bracket laid into them, because really the bracket opened up for them and they had a real significant opportunity to take a national title home, but you played the best team in the NCAA. So how disappointed can you realistically be that they don't have a banner?
When we talked last week, I said if they make it to the championship game and they've got to play Villanova, it's all gravy. And that's what it was. I didn't expect them to win this game. I knew what Villanova had. Villanova is too deep of a team and too talented of a team to sit there and to be able to be stopped by this Michigan team right now. Them getting there, them competing, I was a little bit disappointed with the way they lost. I felt like they got blown out. I wanted to see a little bit better of an effort from Michigan, but they got there. They did their job. I didn't expect them to win. It's what it was. If they had played Kansas, it'd have been a different story. If they'd have lost in this manner against Kansas, I'd be pissed off right now. But it was Villanova. Villanova for almost the entire season was the very best team in all of basketball. They had a stretch there where they were dealing with injuries, and their season went a little bit sideways, and that's kind of why they fell a little bit in the rankings and why they ended up taking the number 2 overall seed to Virginia. If those injuries didn't happen and they didn't struggle a little bit, they'd have been the number 1 overall seed. They were the best team in all of college basketball this year. And it just goes to show you, they can bring a guy in off the bench who can take over a game. And if Michigan had an answer for that guy, I think Michigan would have won this game because Michigan did a great job taking out their starters. You look at what Michigan did to their starters. They got those guys in foul trouble early. I think by, the 7-minute mark of the second half, they had guys sitting on the bench who were starters with 4 fouls. That's what you wanted. That was the game plan. That's what you did. The problem was you didn't have an answer for the guys that they subbed in. Michigan did a great job taking out their high-profile athletes. I mean, the guy that everybody was talking about was Bridges, and Bridges only scored 19 points. DiVincenzo scored 31. Everybody else was kept to single digits.
And some of the shots,
did a great job.
Some of the shots that he hit were very contested too. They were not easy either.
He was taking on double teams. He couldn't be stopped. It was. Do you remember what is it? NBA. What was it?
NBA Jams.
Yes, where the guy would sit there, he'd fall back behind the 3-pointer, and it would just be a fire streak going through the net. That's what was going on here. The guy couldn't be stopped. He couldn't be contained. You got beat by one guy. You just didn't have an answer for him. He was either too strong for some of your smaller guys. He was too fast for some of your bigger guys. And in the end, he was just too agile, and he got hot. I mean, honestly, the hoop looked as big as an ocean to this guy.
Now, I want to set this up properly because after the game, like I said, I showed Michigan the proper amount of respect. I definitely showed Villanova a lot of respect because they had the best team and they had really excellent guard play, which you really need in a tournament setting. You need a guy that's going to take over. You need solid guard play, and I think Michigan is going to look to do that to improve in the coming years. So I thought, okay, you ask yourself, now, Michigan had this season. You start to recap. You start to explore and say, okay, look at this Michigan team realistically. How can they get over the hump? Okay, so you got this great team. You got Mo Wagner. You got a guard transfer in Matthews. You got some young talent coming in. What's that final bridge that takes a team that can get to the Final Four, that can get to the finals, but can't win it all? What's that final bridge? And I want to play this because this is from the Motor City Sports Rant that airs every Tuesday on our network. And I thought that it would get some critique and some debate, but a lot of people were supporting me, and a lot of people also were against what I said because of basically the word that I use in terms of a player that I think Michigan needs to get now and strike while the iron's hot. So I'm going to play about a minute of this, and this is what I thought in terms of what I think Michigan needs to do in order to get over the hump to actually, on that Monday night, take it down. But now, if you're a Michigan fan, you just need one last piece. You got to get a couple more blue chippers. You got to get big name dudes in here. And I'm hoping this run for Michigan allows them to go out there nationally and maybe just get one or two more big names to come to the University of Michigan, to come to Ann Arbor. Because, yes, you can have a great team collectively. Yes, you can go out there and have the best system. But by and large, for the most part, what wins in the NCAA tournament is talent. You got to have talented individuals that can put the ball in the basket, that can be athletic, that can do a bunch of different things. And for Michigan to take that next step, because look, from time to time, a coach of John Beilein's caliber, he can go out there and make deep runs to the NCAA tournament. He's shown that. But to get over the edge, to get the final prize, you got to get one or two individuals that are superstars. You got to get the guy that's going to take your program over the edge. And does Michigan have the opportunity to do that now? Yes. Now the iron's hot. You got to strike John Beilein. You got to go out there and recruit top-end dudes. You got to bring in the next 2 or 3 years, you got to bring in one or two potential one-and-doners. And so I think that phrase right there really set off the reaction that I got on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. And feel free, when you listen to these podcasts and you hear us doing our videos, you hear Adam, you hear Vito, Jason, myself, feel free, good or bad, indifferent, feel free. We air the critiques. We are not butthurt here. We're not that egomaniacal where we just think that whatever we say is just the gospel. If you want to disagree with me, put out your point, and I'll give you my points. And so and I'll just lay it out real quickly in terms of why I think that way. Look, Michigan now has been to the finals twice, 2013, 2018. Have they walked away with the title? No. Do they have a great system in place? Yes. Do I feel like they have blue chippers there? No. They have what I'm familiar with being a supporter of Michigan State football. They got a good system in place and a great coach that can elevate talent. But when you have better talent to start with, imagine if you have talent that the likes of Duke or the likes of Kentucky on Michigan. I'm not asking for a whole roster full of one-and-doners. I'm not asking for a complete overhaul of the system and go to Kentucky where that's all you do is just recycle one-and-doners and just keep doing it and you hope for, a team to gel. No, senior leadership is important. Getting juniors and seniors is important. I'm asking for one top 5 player nationally. Come to Michigan. Find that guy that can be the guy to take you over the edge. That's what I'm saying is going to get you to win it all. Look, I know everybody's in love with Michigan basketball right now. You just had a great run. But in the end, you still have no rings. Got the same amount of rings in the last 10 years as Michigan State. Michigan State has 1 ring. They were able to do it as a team. But for Michigan to get over the edge, if you're going to cash it in one time, you just got to get 1 or 2 more talented individuals. That's all I'm saying. And what I'm saying is you got to be willing to open your mind to gamble on a dude that's talented that might leave you after a year. Now, if you can have a great system in place and John Beilein is the grandfather everyone talks about, maybe that talent will stay all 4 years and you have multiple runs. But for Michigan to cash it in, to get it, to go out there and compete, you think Villanova's going anywhere? You think Duke, Kentucky, State? You think that Michigan is just now going to be a perennial team that gets to the Final Four? No. To cash it in the next 5 years with John Beilein, all I'm asking is you got to get 1 or 2 nationally ranked players. And when you have those nationally ranked players, it leads you to believe then potentially they could be one and done. I'm not saying change your system. I'm saying go out there, find 1 or 2 dudes nationally, best of the best, whether it be a forward, guard, point guard, that can just lead your team when you need that shot versus Villanova. When you're down and you're down by 4 and you have an opportunity and you're wide open, Mo Wagner missed the ball 3 feet to the right. There was nobody else to complement him. You needed that one other dude where you're like, everyone's looking around and they're like, who's going to take that shot? Give it to Boom. Give it to Jackson. Jackson takes to the hole. You know he's going to get that 2 points, or you know he's going to get that foul. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying revolutionize the basketball world here. All I said was go out there and get a little bit better talent. Go out there and try and compete with State for the big dogs. That's all I said. I got pushback, bro. And you're going to push back on me. I'm right.
I don't think so. Let me ask you this, okay? How far did Kentucky make it? Sweet 16, right?
Oh, has Kentucky has a ring with John Calipari in that system?
How far has...
That's one more than you guys.
How far has Duke made it? Duke made it to what, the Elite Eight?
Duke has...
how far did Michigan State make it? Okay, exactly. And all those teams, they all have one-and-doneers involved. Do you know how many one-and-done players were in the Final Four this year?
Lay it on me.
0. There were 0 one-and-done players in the Final Four this year. If we extrapolate that and we go out to the Elite Eight, look at the Elite Eight. The Elite Eight has Duke with, I believe, 1, maybe 2 guys that are one-and-done, and Texas Tech has a one-and-doner as well. So 2 teams in the Elite Eight. You don't necessarily need a one-and-done type talent to sit there and put you over the hump. And that's, I think, the big issue that everybody's having, because everybody's hearing what you're saying in the thing that's sticking is one-and-done player. You can go out and you can get better guys. I think we all agree that with recruiting, you always want to recruit the best athlete, the best guy who's going to fit your system. I think we all agree with that. You don't necessarily need a one-and-done player. Generally, with a one-and-done player, there is baggage and there is things that go along with it. And if you're at the University of Michigan, if you're at the University of Michigan State, you don't want the baggage that goes along with that. It usually involves duffel bags full of money and AAU coaches and other personnel getting involved, and it's a violations of the NCAA. So you don't want any of that. Even Kansas with Dollar Bill himself, he doesn't even necessarily have any one-and-doners. He might have 2 guys that could go, but they both averaged 4 points this year, so it'd be stupid for them to even go to the NBA right now. You don't need one-and-done players. You need to sit there and build a system that's going to work for your type of guys that you're recruiting. And I think at this point, John Beilein has done that. He has basically taken a program from the ashes and has raised it up. You're now played in 2 finals over the course of the last 6 years. That's pretty exceptional. That now gives you a little bit of bravado. You can kind of stick your chest out a little bit. You can go and recruit better talent. If you look at what Michigan's bringing in next year, and this is where all the recruitniks go crazy, Michigan was able to go into East Lansing and pull out an ESPN Top 100 player. You know, they're able to go overseas and pull guys out. They're able to go into foreign countries and grab guys. I mean, they've got a guy coming from Ontario, Canada. Mo Wagner's from Berlin, Germany. They've got guys coming in who are exceptional talents. And I know what you're saying. You want a guy who's going to be in like the top 5, maybe the top 10 of an ESPN Top 100, right? You want that 5-star guy. They're doing a pretty good job right now with 3- and 4-star kids. And it's very similar to what Michigan State does with Mark D'Antonio and the guys that he recruits. He doesn't go out there. He doesn't get necessarily 5-star athletes. He goes out there and gets guys that fit his system and play the way that he devises a scheme. And that's what Beilein's doing right now. I think what Beilein's doing is working. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to go out there and pull a Calipari and start trying to recruit guys that you basically, honestly, Michigan has no chance to get those guys. They just don't. They're not in the likes of a Duke, of a Kentucky. I'd be even willing to say Michigan State, even though Michigan State has struggled the last 3 years. You know, Michigan State is still a name brand program. The Michigan program for basketball, it's not a name brand program. It's nice. It's cute. You know, Louisville used to be a name brand program, and you see what happened with them. And you know why that they were a name brand program. It's because they had Adidas money flowing all throughout that system as well as hookers. It's what it is. Right now, Michigan doesn't need one-and-done talent. What they need is better talent. And going out and getting guys who have high-end potential, like Brandon Johns or Ignis, I'm going to hack this last name up, Brazdeikis.
Yeah.
Give me credit.
Yeah,
give me credit. That was close, right? It was pretty close.
Yes, that's
good.
good.
I mean, those guys right there, those are 4-star kids who are really, really talented. You know, they're going to make a difference when they come in. I don't need somebody who's going to show up and then be gone next year. You don't need that. It's too much inconsistency for your program.
Okay, then
and
I'll put
the
it
way
this way.
John Beilein's program operates, he's got that consistency. I mean, look at how many guys he had. Let me finish this point real quick, and then I'll let you go. Because I know I'm just kind of hogging the mic time right now, and this is what you do. That's your cue. That's your thing. Muhammad Abdul Rahman, right? The guy's a senior. And at certain points this year, he was one of your most valuable players. Mo Wagner's been an exceptional talent, and you've got to watch him grow. I wouldn't be upset if he came back one more year because I think he still has room to develop, and there's still things he can do. Charles Matthews is a guy who, the longer he's played under Beilein, you've seen his growth and his maturity, especially through this tournament. Charles Matthews was just a guy. And as this tournament wore on, he ended up becoming the MVP of this team for certain games and certain stretches. So even Xavier Simpson, you remember Xavier Simpson early in the year? Guy couldn't hit a free throw. Guy was struggling all over the floor. Wasn't a very good point guard. As the season's gone on, he's developed. He's become much better with his free throws. He's a guy who you can now count on. And I would make the argument that when he was your point guard, it was a totally different look for this team, and it operated much more smoothly.
Okay, you've seen now the progression of Michigan basketball. You've seen their runs in the tournament. You've seen the success that John Beilein has had. You've seen now their appearance in the 2018 tournament. They made their way through not the best teams that they went up against, but they won the games. Give them credit. But now the question has to be asked then, has Michigan basketball peaked? Can they get to the next level and win it all then in the next 2 or 3 years, in the prime now years of John Beilein's tenure there at Michigan?
2 or 3. You're only giving Beilein 2 or 3 years.
65 years old. He's going to be 68. How much longer is he going to do it? Do you think Michigan wins it all?
Let's say he goes to 70. Can we say he goes to 70?
No problem.
Will you negotiate with me there?
No problem.
All right, so he's going to go to 70. 65 now. So
in 5 years.
Yes, I think they win one.
No.
I think they win one.
I do not. That's why if they do it this way, if they continue with the talent that they're recruiting, I say that the highest level Michigan can achieve is getting to the tournament final and losing to a better team.
Would you not agree with me, though, that the talent that Michigan has been able to recruit since John Beilein took over to now has gotten better? It's gotten much more exceptional.
Yes.
And I think being able to build upon making it to a finals and losing to arguably the best team in college basketball, I think that gives you a little bit of, I used the word bravado before, gives you a little bit of bravado where you can go sit down in a kid's living room and say, look, this is what we've done. We think you're a piece that can put us over the hump. I think you can go do that now. You can go get better talent. You got to remember, when Beilein came in, this guy was getting like 2 and 3 star kids. He had trouble recruiting the city of Detroit, much less going into a place like Chicago, going overseas to Berlin, Germany, or going across through the Windsor Tunnel and going and getting a kid from Ontario. He couldn't do that before. He can do that now. He can go get kids who are going to make a difference. If he wanted to, he could go down to the backwoods of Memphis, Tennessee, and go grab a 5-star athlete if he wanted to. I don't think that kid's going to come because I think he's going to go where the money's going. I'm just saying. And the money ain't coming from here. At this point, he's done enough to be able to go and get what he wants and to do what he has to do. My question for you is, where does this program go next? What are they doing next year? Is there any way they get back to this point next year?
Time will tell. They have some great recruits coming in. I think that a big key, a big factor for Michigan basketball revolves around one name, Mo Wagner. If he comes back, I like them being in the Final Four to be at least talked about being a national elite contender to win it all. If he doesn't come back, I think they take a step back. Maybe just, top 8, top 16 team overall. They're going to play well. They're going to shoot lights out. They got a lot of young talent coming in. You take a step back, and I know people will say, oh my gosh, you're hating on the program. But they take a step back. But in 2 years, with the talent that they got coming in, the recruits that they got coming in, I think John Beilein is going to get better talent. But in terms of getting the talent that they need to get over the hump to win it all, I just look now on Scouts.com in terms of the top 5 basketball recruits. 3 of them are going to Duke. So you look at the list. If you look at the top 15 players that are going to college next year, the names are Duke, Oregon, Kentucky, Kansas, and Villanova. Nobody in the top 15 that's ranked nationally is going to State or Michigan. Mm-hmm. And that's all I'm saying is that in order to take that next step to maybe even have a run like Jay Wright's having, you got to go out there and get a little bit better talent. You got to go out there. And when I'm saying better talent, I want the best talent. You're saying better, I'm saying best.
But I don't think Michigan or Michigan State has the ability to go out there and get the best talent. The best talent's going to a program like Duke, like Kentucky.
That's the tough part.
Do you know what I'm saying? How do you overcome that? Or even going to a program like a Villanova who has won 2 of 3 championships.
That's the toughest thing. That's the tough question that people have to ask is how does a team like Michigan State get back to national relevance? And I just think that you got to go with it. I think that people want to maybe sustain a program. I'm more along the lines of it's time to cash in. It's time to go for it all in the next year or 2.
I agree with you, but unless you're dropping duffel bags of money in front of kids, how do you do that? Do you know what I'm saying? Everybody's got to realize recruiting is dirty. It is really, really dirty. It's hard to keep a program really clean. And for the most part, I think Michigan and Michigan State have both done an exceptional job doing a good job recruiting. As far as Michigan goes next year, if Wagner comes back, and again,
he'll be a beast.
He would. I don't think it'd be a bad look for him to come back because I think he has parts of his game that he needs to refine. If he comes back, I can make an argument with you that they would be in the same exact spot, maybe even a better team next year. If he comes back, because Wagner's going to mature more. I think Charles Matthews, he's going to be a totally different player than what he was this year. You get another year of Xavier Simpson really refining his skills and becoming a better player. Plus, you got Jordan Poole, Isaiah Livers. I like that. I like that team. I like the way that looks. I think they're athletic. I think they're long. I think they can get up and down the floor, and they can score. I think what Beeline has to do, though, is he has to develop some type of inside-out game, whether it be with Mo Wagner working in a post, or whether it be with your guards being able to dribble and penetrate and then kicking the ball out.
Great points. It'll be an interesting debate in the coming years, but I do believe in terms of Michigan, they've really cemented themselves as a basketball school. John Beeline's getting all the respect that he deserves. It makes it fun because when you have a team like Michigan, that just can only make Michigan State better and be hungrier and make Tom Izzo hungrier as well. So the rivalry between Michigan and Michigan State is only going to get better. The coming years in college basketball, I do think more people are going to tune into Michigan because success is on the way. I just say, how do you get the ultimate success? If you're listening to this and you have a totally different idea as to how Michigan can get over the hump, message us. Feel free 24/7 at Detroit Podcast. Get in the mix. The best get retweeted to the masses. We enjoy, we read everything. Thank you for your support. A really interesting debate. All right, we're going to come back, take a quick time out. We'll come back and we got to break down the first week of the Detroit Tigers. Some things that kind of popped up that got Doc and Jock's attention. We'll talk about it next on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project back in 2013, we were looking for a place to host all of our recorded audio. And thank goodness we found Podomatic.com. Why do we use them? Super easy. That's the thing I Googled. I Googled uploading a podcast to the internet quickly, and Podomatic was the first thing that popped up. When we have great guests, when Adam and I have verbal warfare, when we disagree about the future of Michigan, we take the great audio, the great sports debate, we edit it, make it nice, and then we upload it to Podomatic within 10 minutes. It's really great. If you're looking to reach the level of success as the Detroit Sports Podcast, you got to have a great host site. All the hosts here on the network, we're going to recommend one host site and one host site alone, Podomatic.com. Yeah, baby. We got to talk about the Detroit Tigers. I know it might be one of the few times we actually have a real great discussion about baseball, but my goodness, man. Tigers baseball kicked off, and of course, cuz you knew the Tigers would get screwed somehow this year, but it had to be game one. It was an unbelievable situation where you have all the excitement, right? All the fans. And granted, it was delayed because of the weather and things like that. Opening day was supposed to be last Thursday, ended up being last Friday. Tigers go out there, they're excited, they come back, they're playing Pittsburgh, going back and forth. A couple mistakes here and there made by Ron Gardenhire in terms of the use of the bullpen, but that's to be expected. And then, obviously,
it's like a 13-inning game.
Yeah,
come on, man.
But Major League Baseball screwed the Tigers in that they came back. They had the walk-off. They had the excitement. You had the fans cheering. They would have been 1-0. And the Tigers get screwed. They take a 5-minute delay to kind of look at everything. And the rule says that replay should only be 2 minutes. And, of course, it comes back, and you're like, oh, no, it's not conclusive. There's no way. It looks like by 15 angles, 7 of them show maybe he was tagged, 8 of them show maybe he wasn't. So that's the definition to me of inconclusive. And so they come back and they make the right call, right? He's safe. We walk off. We're all happy. We're all drinking beers. We're all tipping our favorite entertainers. No. Does that happen? No. Of course, they come back and they give the out signal, and everyone's in shock. Like, seriously? In our house, in Detroit, at Comerica Park, they jammed us. And Major League Baseball obviously violated the rules. They didn't do it properly. And, of course, the Tigers go on to lose the game because Ron Gardenhire gets ejected. They leave their reliever, Alex Wilson, in for damn near 75 pitches. And he gives up a massive bomb, and they lose. And since then, they've been shot out a couple times. The weather has delayed several games. They've blown great performances by Boyd and Fulmer. And we're sitting here talking about how bad are the Detroit Tigers. As bad as it could have gone, cuz for the Tigers, it actually went worse. It was bad.
Really?
1-4,
You
1 and
really
5
feel
stars.
this way?
The Tigers suck.
Okay, but you knew they were going to suck, right?
But if they win that game, it maybe could turn a tide of this rebuild. Maybe they're 500.
One game?
Yes.
No, not at all. Look, there are things to look at, and you should be hopeful and you should be happy about, right? Again, Fulmer looks good. Boyd looks good. With Fulmer, I wish his strikes to balls was the ratio was closer to 2-1 instead of 1-1. But whatever, okay. Fulmer looks good. Boyd looks good. You're seeing some heart and some desire from these guys. I mean, there are games where it seems like they're totally out of it and they're scratching and clawing all the way up until that final out. Yeah, they've got shafted in the Pittsburgh loss. It's gonna happen. They're gonna get shafted again. I think the big issue with this team right now, you have inconsistent offense. And you've got a pitching staff that you're not really sure what to make of it. Jordan Zimmerman looked really good, but he still gave up 4 runs, even though he struck out 8. Like, what is that? Not really sure. Look, you need bats to get hot. I think that happens when the weather changes. And thanks, Major League Baseball, for starting the game or the season earlier. That made sense. You got a pitching staff that I think we're still trying to work through and try to figure out. I don't think it's as bad as everybody's making it out to be. Yeah, right now they're in the dumpster of the American League Central. They're right now at this point 1-4. It's what it is. We all knew going into the season it wasn't going to be a very good season. I mean, shoot, I have them picked to lose how many games? Almost 97? Almost 97 losses. So how many wins do you think they're going to have? Not a whole bunch. And yeah, Pittsburgh's not a very good team, and Kansas City's not a very good team, and I don't know what to make of the White Sox yet, but Detroit's not a good team. They're going to be a bottom 5 team when it's all said and done with. So just accept it, take the draft pick, get somebody who's going to help this team later on, and let's keep it moving. I don't think it's that bad. You got to find the silver lining and everything, and right now I think the silver lining with the Tigers is, in the end, we're going to have a high draft pick. We've got some good things going with some guys. I think the progression of Matt Boyd is something that should be praised right now. Matt Boyd's a guy who you weren't really sure what to make of him last year. Right now, 1 game in, he looks like he's a pretty decent pitcher. The fact that Michael Fulmer's arm hasn't fallen off, I'm excited about. You know, Miguel Cabrera's hitting the ball. Nick Castellanos is hitting the ball. I'm excited to see those guys play. Jeimer Candelario, his performance so far this season, I'm impressed with. And I think these are things that we need to look at. Don't look at the big picture, and the big picture being what their record is and necessarily how the game ends. Look at what's going on inside the game and how certain individuals are playing and how they're preparing and how they're taking care of business on the field.
Before we look at Ron Gardenhire, we look at some of the players that you've obviously come to love and been like, oh, these guys
I don't love these guys.
Oh, God.
I'm just telling you, look, I'm usually the voice of negativity on this podcast. I'm usually the one who's screaming, ranting, and raving, almost suplexing my computer through a wall, and then we got to pay to fix that wall, and I don't feel like paying to fix that wall. Look, I am normally that guy. I'm just telling you, don't let your blood pressure get up. It's very early in the season. We all knew they were going to suck. Hey, guess what? They suck. It's what it is.
After game 1, do you have a problem with how Major League Baseball uses their replay? Because I kind of like the idea of getting it right, but when you have a rule in place that says it takes 2 minutes and it takes 5, and if it's supposed to be inconclusive after 2 minutes, why after 5? Why is it that, again, a Detroit team is getting screwed by the misapplication of the rule? And then it comes out, because it's kind of funny. They're like, Ron Gardenhire's like, yeah, he comes out, tells the media, he's like, you know, Major League Baseball came out and said, yeah, we messed up. And then Major League Baseball releases a statement and says, everything's great, y'all. We made the right call. So you're like, so you made the right call or you made the wrong call? And it's like, you know, what was it maybe supposed to be a private conversation that Ron Gardenhire was not supposed to go out publicly and tell everybody? But they know they made a mistake. There's a rule. There's a rule in place that says, hey, it's supposed to be 2 minutes. And so you did not follow that rule. And that's unfortunate that the Tigers got screwed by the fact that Major League Baseball doesn't know how to apply their rules. I like Major League Baseball's replay system in theory, but I do believe that maybe there's got to be some tweaks to it where You got to have maybe a clock on the wall where if it goes off, then that's done. It's cut off no matter what happens. If no ruling takes place, then the call on the field stands. You got to make it work. You got to make it right. You got to just basically, if you have a rule in place, follow it. Why is it when it comes to a Detroit team, the application of the stated rule doesn't come to fruition? I just don't understand. I'll never understand why in the last 3 years, Detroit teams are getting hammered and screwed by the application of some decent rules.
Because Detroit is the b-hole of the sports world.
Right.
All right. And according to Dante DiVincenzo, it's a game changer if it gets licked. Apparently, we get it raw, though, so you just got to take it and keep on moving. That's why we get screwed. Yes, I have an issue with the replay system and how it's used. And I think the initial guidelines for it are spot on. 2 minutes, you get to look at it from however many views you have, but you have 2 minutes to sit there and find discernible evidence to overturn the rule. If you're going on for longer than 2 minutes, you can't overturn it. Obviously, there's not enough proof there. The call on the field stands. I'm all about getting it right. I much prefer us get it right than it get wrong, and then we have to sit there and we have to deal with, what was the name of the pitcher who got boned on his perfect game?
Armando Galarraga.
There you go. We have to deal with Galarraga, and then we got to deal with Jim Joyce, and Jim Joyce crying. I don't need to deal with all that. I don't want any of that. There is no crying in baseball. All right? Didn't Tom Hanks tell you that? Yeah, he did. There's no crying in baseball. We don't need any of that BS. So get it right. Here's the thing. You're on a time limit, though. So when the call is safe on the field, you got 2 minutes to sit there and figure out if he's safe or if he's out. And if you can't figure out in 2 minutes, call on the field stands. It's that simple. I think the bigger issue I have with Major League Baseball right now is all of these cold weather games. I mean, here in Detroit, we're seeing a postponement after a postponement after a postponement. Why? If Major League Baseball really wanted to fix this, and we were talking about this before, this is what we were talking about in some show prep, you can sit there and move the season out 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then you just incorporate all these games that they were going to play and have them be day-night doubleheaders on like a Sunday. So you end up playing 2 games on a Sunday, so you can take the family out and you can go to see 2 baseball games if you wanted to. I don't know why they don't do that. I think that would make much more sense. That way you're not dealing with these postponements and all these cancellations. I mean, shoot, thank God they were able to play a doubleheader with Pittsburgh here, because Pittsburgh's only coming here this one time. Just this one time. Very first series of the season, they're here. That's it, no more. So what are you going to do? I mean, it's cool for the Royals because they'll be back around here in a couple weeks, but geez Louise, not everybody plays here all the time.
So early on, first handful of games, Detroit Tigers, Ron Gardenhire, what do you make of him?
I like Ron. I think he's doing a decent enough job.
You don't have an issue with the fact first game he gets ejected, costs the team basically the win, and then sends out some lackey to do the press conference game 1? I think that was kind of Bush.
Well, that's a little Bush League, but overall, I think he's the guy. Look, can we all agree that the Tigers screwed up the hiring of the manager with the last manager and now this manager? Okay, you go and you get a guy when you're still kind of built in that old school system. You go get a guy who's kind of from the new school, and then you're starting to incorporate new procedures for a new school way of thinking, but you're going to go hire an old school manager. It doesn't make sense. It's very disjointed. I have no idea what the Tigers want to be or how they want to be or where they want to go. So I think they screwed up with the hiring of 2 managers. But right now, for where this team's at and what this team is, I think Ron Gardenhire has a good understanding of what they have. You got young players who need time to grow, need to kind of learn as they're going along, and I think he's the guy who is probably the best hand to help them along. I don't think Ron Gardenhire has any aspirations of winning a World Series. I don't think you have any aspirations of this team winning a World Series. Mm-hmm. I know I sure as hell don't. So I think all that going into account, I think he's the right guy right now. When it's all said and done, they'll be further along than if they had somebody else.
Okay, let's continue.
As I stutter all that out.
Let's continue to mix in some baseball talk. I do feel like, you know what, the Tigers podcast is great, but talking baseball with you is always fun too, because now you're bringing the positive perspective in, and it's really good. I like it. So we'll keep.
It's because I'm a little bit slow.
We'll keep talking baseball
That's what makes
here.
You feel smarter
on the network as well. But also, you know what's fun? There's a lot of new things kind of happening in Detroit, and what's fun is we get messages from all sorts of people. There's a lot of fans that are like, Doc and Jock, come out to Hamtramck. Come check out Detroit City FC. Come check out this. Come check out that. And I really appreciate that. And what's really cool is there's this great event, an eSports event that's dropping on Friday. The Detroit Sports Commission and High Score Esports is having the first ever Red Bull Esports event. It's going to be interesting because, you know, you and I were not really exactly all about esports and things like that, but you and I were talking. We both played Madden. We both play video games sporadically, but it's a big thing in town. We're going to have Nate McClure on the line in just a few moments here. We're going to talk about this great event that's going to take place at the Garden Theater in Midtown Detroit this Friday, 7 p.m. So I'm looking forward to kind of talking about it, learning a little bit about it. I like that. And hey, if there's something cool going on and you want Doc and Jock to show up or you want to tell us about it, feel free, message us at Detroit Podcast. We're open-minded. I think Adam and I, we go, what's this about? And we look at it and we go, hey, if it's interesting, Doc and Jock may show up, do some interviews, and have a good time with it. But let's dial up Nate and see what this whole esports thing is about.
So like John was saying, High Score Esports, along with the Detroit Sports Commission, will be hosting Detroit's first ever Red Bull esports event on Friday at the Garden Theater in Midtown Detroit. That's across the street from Children's Hospital. That's going to be taking place at 7 o'clock in the evening. Now, at this event, contestants will battle other players from all over the region in Street Fighter V, Tekken 7, and Guilty Gear. There will also be side tournaments featuring one of my favorite games, Dragon Ball Fighter Z and Super Smash Bros. 4. In addition to cash prizes for the finalists, the champions from each game will also win a round-trip airfare, accommodations, and free entry to Chicago's Red Bull Conquest event on April 28th. Right now, we're lucky enough to have one of the gentlemen who's responsible for setting this event up on the phone with us. What's going on, Nathaniel McClure?
How are we doing, guys?
Excellent. So, how did you get into esports?
I'm one of the few individuals, luck, skill, or otherwise, I've been able to create a living off of video games. I've been in video games for almost 20 years now. I worked on multiple large titles. I've owned multiple game development studios over the years. And just about 2 years ago or so, my partner Neil approached me to come on board for his gaming venue, essentially. And we evaluated it. We were looking for a cool business model that worked. We're familiar with LAN centers and stuff like that. We grew up in them. We grew up playing. But we wanted to kind of take a twist or take a turn on it and be one of the nation's top competitive gaming facilities.
What was the first game that really got you, or the gaming system that really got you excited, that really hooked you? Because you said you've been doing this for what now, over 20
years? As a player?
Years? Yeah.
Yeah, as a player, I was a Sega kid, so eons ago on the Genesis, Ghosts and Goblins. It's pure torture porn. Like, you just die again and again and again and again. And the challenge of it was fascinating. I absolutely love, I fell in love with the challenging elements of video games, where any person at any level, at any physical capability, at any age, they can test themselves. And don't get me wrong, it's a video game. I'm not trying to make it grander than it is, so to speak. But it's a fun challenge. Like people play Sudoku, people playing games since the dawn of time. This is just this more interactive, exciting electronic form of those games. And I've loved games. I'm 43 this year. I've been playing games for almost 40 of them.
So how many controllers did you go through when you were playing this game? Because I know I've gone through quite my share.
Oh, yeah. A ton. It's funny because I felt just a couple of years ago, I moved my development studio to Michigan from California. I made my homage to Ghosts and Goblins and the Ghouls and Ghosts franchise called Blood of the Werewolf, pure side-scrolling torture, and it was a blast. It's out on Xbox and PlayStation now and all that good stuff. But yeah, man, it's been a long, and it's not an easy path, right? It's entertainment at the end of the day, and it can be very vicious. I had the privilege of working on Call of Duty for years, and we helped take this, small little game about World War II and make it the largest franchise in the world, and I learned a ton on that space, and then being independent and the ups and downs of that, and moving my company across country, and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I thought esports really spoke to me on many volumes. Because when I make a game, it might take me 3 years, 4 years to make a game. Where when I run High Score, I have players in right there. We talk about games, we experience in games, and it's a blast, man. I play video games for a living. How can you be?
Right. How can you be upset? All right. For those who are totally novices to what esports is, what is esports? Mm-hmm. Can you explain it to those who are unfamiliar with it?
Absolutely. It runs the gamut. So we'll start with the lowest. Like, hey, our fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers, they grew up with golf leagues, bowling leagues, dart leagues, insert game of their day, euchre leagues. They go out and play it. So what we do at High Score is we run those leagues, but for your favorite video game. Everything from the obvious ones, the fighting games they're doing now, to the shooters like Overwatch, to Rocket League, all this cool type stuff. So esports on one level is purely video gaming in a competitive sense. You're not just sitting there, going through a cool story or doing something. You're competing against another individual to see who's better. And then you go to the pinnacle of it, the comparable of the Cavs or the Dallas Cowboys. You have these multi-million, which will soon be billion-dollar sports franchises that are competing for millions of dollars in prize money and sponsorships on world stages. So it's take everything we've ever done in sports, right? From elevating basketball, from shooting a thing into a plastic hoop to one of the biggest games in the world, to taking checkers and chess and all these simple things and evolving up championships. We're just seeing that in video games right now. And it's so incredibly prominent because now is the era of social media, so it's that much louder.
Nathaniel McClure from High Score Esports. You can follow them at We Are High Score on Twitter. Now, Nathaniel, take us through the event that's going to take place on Friday, the Red Bull Esports event. There's going to be a competition. There's going to be side tournaments. For those that are going to attend at 7 o'clock and for those that are going to participate, take us through what it's like for an esports event to take place in town in Detroit.
Absolutely. So you're going to show up down at the Redford Theater, the Garden Theater, and we're going to check you in. You'll come in at first. We'll check you in at the front table. We have a lot of TOs, stands for tournament organizers. They're going to help you. You're going to come on in. It's a gorgeous facility if you've never been there before. By the way, admission is free to the event for everybody. You're going to come in. We're going to slot you in. Hopefully, you can sign up earlier. The best way to go is to our Facebook page, High Score Esports, and check on our events tab, and there are early signups there. I strongly encourage early signups because it allows us to plan accordingly, make sure we have all the right amount of machines, you name it, all that good stuff. So anyways, you come to the event, you're going to check in, say, hey, I'm here for this game or this game. We're doing all fighting that night, Street Fighter, went through the names before, but all the top fighting games. And so Red Bull approached us. We've been talking to them for quite some time. They are the pinnacle of fighting game esports. They run all the major tournaments across the country. They work with Capcom and all the big companies to provide the best stuff. They reached out because they saw Detroit and Michigan in particular as a very strong fighting game community, and they wanted to kind of dip their toe in this space to see if it's worth bringing larger events here. So us being the kind of premier competitive space, they said, hey, guys, would you put together this tournament, and we'll bring you some cool prizes and all that good stuff. And they have so they launched this thing called Red Bull Conquest, which is a region-based competitive system to determine who the best players in the country are. So the winners of our event for each of the three top games, Street Fighter, Tekken, and Guilty Gear, get round-trip airfare, accommodations, and entry to the April 28th Red Bull Conquest event in Chicago. If they were to win that, they would go to the grand finals in Washington. So you come in, you're going to play some games, you're going to have a ton of fun, you're going to be engaged with a real passionate group of individuals, people that truly love games as a sport, games as camaraderie, a great way to meet people. We got a live DJ. We got a VIP section with some top-line catering. It's going to be a great night out. It really is.
All right, so now with the event that's going on, are these going to be teams? Are these going to be individuals? How is this going to work?
Individual.
Okay, individuals.
Yep.
Awesome. So,
So if you're familiar, for non-video game esports people, like if you're familiar with a bracket system, just like we just saw in March Madness, that's how it is. So players come in. Players are seeded based on – we have a lot of professional players right here in Michigan that are signed with major teams that travel around the world and play for money. So a lot of those guys will get seeded. We'll know, kind of who's in order. A lot of the newcomers will get seeded down below for obvious reasons, and then it turns into a bracket fight. Double elimination. So even if you lose once, you bump down to losers, and you can battle your way back up into the tournament bracket, and we'll boil it all down. The event will run – each individual game will run about 3 to 4 hours each. It's we'll have around 40 or 50 participants in each one. So we'll run that through the entire night, and then at the end of the night, we'll declare our winners, and they get their prize from Red Bull, who's also joining us there. And, it's interesting. For those who've never watched it before in person, you think like, it's just video games. It's hype, man. It's like if you went to a UFC event or a boxing event and when you see top performing individuals at the top of their game, it doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if it's ping pong. I don't care if it's darts, video games, basketball. They perform at such a high level, it's enthralling to watch. The crowd gets into it. They start yelling. They start getting excited. It's a lot of fun, man. I really enjoy it.
So can anybody kind of show up and join in and play, or do you have to be invited, or can you go through a registration process to be invited to play?
Anybody can show up and play. Anyone can show up and play. So you've never played before and you're interested in fighting games, you can beat all your friends' butts and you want to come down and see where you match up, this is the place to do it. And you can, like I said, you can register online via our events page, or you can register right at the door.
Nathaniel McClure, high score eSports, with us, kind enough to share about his experience and this event coming to Detroit. Where do you see eSports now going in the future? You've talked now about sponsorship. You've talked about hype events. You've talked about, these events drawing a lot of fans and professionals, individuals who are making this a career. Do you see potentially, an organized league forming up formally, getting on the likes of an ESPN full-time, or maybe even an eSports channel? How big can this thing grow?
So just to give you a little bit of scope and scale, NBA launches their pro esports team. So right now, every single NBA team owns at least one, if not multiple esports teams. Over the past 6 months, Jerry Jones from the Cowboys has bought multiple esports teams. Bob Kraft from the Patriots has bought multiple esports teams. Our local Dan Gilbert has bought multiple esports teams. The billionaires are buying in, so I think it's a relatively safe bet. But there is, it's really the entire scale of it, because we're not only going to see the big major stuff come and the big money come to that space, but also, like talked about before, kids that are seeing this as a Pop Warner opportunity to start training and building up, but also just as a lifelong pursuit. Playing games is fun. And that's what it really boils down to. It's shed its image of, it's something you do in your parents' basement. No, it's something you do just like you watch Game of Thrones, you do anything else. There's some really high-end entertainment. But to answer your question, the fascinating differentiator between esports and traditional sports, in my mind, is it lacks physicality, right? We go watch a Lions game and we see a huge hit. The crowd feels it. When we see LeBron take off and just throw it on someone's head, you feel it. You don't have that exact same type of response in a game space. But where this thrives more than anything we've ever seen in the history of entertainment is online. And our children and our children's children aren't going to grow up watching Sunday football. Twitch, which is the premier broadcast station for video games, already beats football, beats the NFL in ratings on a given Sunday for video games. It's insane the amount of volume that younger people are watching this stuff on their mobile device and their computers. And that's where it's going. Television won't come back. It's really advertisers are starting to move to these more non-traditional streaming spaces, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, and that's where all the advertising money is going to go. And eventually we'll see TV continue to teeter and teeter and teeter, and now you'll have kids and people tuning in on Twitch to watch in the millions to watch single esports events.
All right, just a reminder, High Score Esports, along with the Detroit Sports Commission, are hosting the first ever Red Bull eSports event at the Garden Theater in Midtown Detroit. That's right across the street from Children's Hospital. It's going to be taking place at 7 o'clock on Friday night. Again, as Nathaniel mentioned, admission is free, but the public is asked to RSVP on High Score Esports Facebook page, or you can find the post on Detroit Sports Commission's page as well. They have an event created there, and it's filling up fast, so RSVP real soon. Also, there is a VIP upgrade. Nathaniel, we got to mention the VIP upgrade. Come on now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The Garden has an incredible, beautiful balcony, so we reserved that for VIP guests that can kind of watch all the action down on the show floor. It's also got a private bar up there. We have a great caterer in Mancini's Italian coming in. There's also green room access up there to people to go kind of chill out. So we recommend it. Especially it's a free event. The VIP upgrade's only $20. We're limiting the tickets to only 100 as well, so there's not a ton left. So yeah, absolutely. If you're looking for that little more premier experience to kind of watch the action and enjoy yourself, sit down, have a good time, I highly recommend the VIP.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this. So we talked about what your love for video games, where it kind of started. What's the game that you go to now, and what's the game that you've got to play all the time?
Yeah, right now, well, what's awesome now is I have kids I can play video games with.
That's cool.
So I love competitive gaming with my kids, man. So Rocket League is a huge go-to for us. It's It's soccer played with cars in like a giant arena. It's a absolute blast. Fortnite right now is huge, crazy battle royale shooters. I always go back to my heart and soul with Call of Duty, Titanfall, all those kind of shooters. So it's really hard to say, oh, it's just this game, because I'm a lover of a lot of different genres and a lot of different platforms. So, yeah, that's a few of them.
Awesome. We want to say thank you for coming on here and basically filling everybody in on what esports is if they didn't know before, and for giving us an insight on what's going on this Friday. So thank you, Nathaniel McClure. We appreciate it.
Oh, no, absolutely. My pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Nathaniel McClure, really interesting stuff there. Esports. I may go out to that event. That's really interesting stuff there. A lot of people are into it. He even said, look, sometimes when they look at the ratings from Twitch versus TV in the NFL, drawing higher ratings. That's what the kids are into, and I'm glad we had a chance to talk to Nathaniel McClure about the event. Go check it out, Friday night, 7 p.m. All right, let's take our final time out. We got to come back, talk Detroit Lions. Stay with us. You're listening to Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support. We wouldn't be able to have great guests on like Nathaniel if it wasn't for your continued support. Free and easy way to support us. Visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can take care of all your online shopping needs. Buy Detroit sports tickets. You can go see which show airs when. The hub of the operation. Thanks to your continued support, downloads are up. Subscribers to our iTunes is way up. We greatly appreciate it. Our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast blows up during major sporting events, and we greatly appreciate it. It doesn't go unnoticed. We know that during events, you come to us to banter, debate, even hammer the guests. No problem. We love it. That's why we started this thing, and we greatly appreciate your support. We wouldn't be able to keep the microphones hot, the lights on here in Sterling Heights. We wouldn't even be able to record from a studio without your support. We greatly appreciate it. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. They don't want none. Man, cuz. That was fun, talking esports with Nathaniel McClure. That was always good stuff. Maybe we'll get out there one day and I'll be the Tekken warrior. Not only take over the sports world, I can also take over the esports world, baby. I'm going to spread, you said, spread it like a virus. Dude, I think I've gotten the sports thing down. Maybe the next challenge, esports. I think I should be the esports warrior.
I wish everybody could be in studio right now to
it's
see
on
my
tape,
face.
baby. They're going to see this. This is great. I might cut this part up.
Oh,
Doc,
man.
sports, podcasting, broadcasting, helping out, philanthropist, and
Philanthropist.
and now esports warrior. That's what I should be, baby.
Oh, look at you.
What-
Look at you.
Pick a game. Tekken?
Can you wear more titles?
I want to be the Tekken superstar of Detroit.
Do you even know what Tekken is?
No.
You. All right, Tekken is similar to Mortal Kombat. All right,
Okay.
it's a fighter. All right,
Got it.
so you got one guy taking another guy, and I don't know. I haven't played Tekken in forever, but they used to have it where it was like a 3D world, so you could kind of move left, right, up and down, jump up in the air, and all that jazz. So trying to throw blows made it a little bit tough. You had to be pretty good at what you did. I used to love when I was a kid. I used to love going to the arcade and just sitting there and just watching guys play like Mortal Kombat for hours. When we were kids, we used to go to the party store over by my buddy's house, and we would just like take like a roll of quarters and we just sit there and play Mortal Kombat. Oh, it was Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 or whatever. We'd play that for hours. Scorpion was the best.
All right, cuz, we're getting ever so close to the draft. There's been some talk that the Lions might have interest in a troubled player. Bob Quinn came out early in his tenure, and to set the scene, he came out and kind of said that, you know, the Lions kind of have a zero-tolerance policy regarding some troublemakers, but in the end, similar to most in that if an individual has talent, that probably is going to override any behavioral problems. The latest is defensive end Arden Keys. Would you have an issue? You know, kind of hearing the rumors and speculation that he might be on the list of somebody that the Lions might draft.
If they took him in their first round, I would have a big issue with this. And the reason why I'd have a big issue with this is you can't miss on those first overall picks, on your first round picks. You can't miss on those. Now, if Arden Keys is there in your second round, he won't be there in your third round. But if he's there in your second round and you went ahead and you took him, I wouldn't be upset at all. But I feel like if you blow your first round pick, there's so much that gets invested in that first overall pick. And I understand that you can build a better draft class by drafting hitting your draft marks late in the draft, whether it be your second, third, fourth, fifth round. You can get some real good value there on guys. But I don't want you to blow your first overall pick. You know what I'm saying? Your first round pick, I don't want you to blow that. I mean, we look at Eric Ebron. Everybody talks about how he was a bust. And Eric Ebron really wasn't a bust. He just wasn't worth going 10th overall. He wasn't a very good first-round pick. Eric Ebron in the second round, going, 42nd overall, would have been a much better player, and he would have been much more accepted here. But Eric Ebron going 10th overall, it caused a little bit of an issue. So I would have a big issue if they were to go and draft this guy in the first round. And look, his issues involve some weight gain issues. He took some time off from LSU. He left for about 4 months. He has some injury concerns. He had his shoulder worked on in that time off that he took. He's had his finger worked on, and he had his ankle. He had issues with his ankle. So there's some injury concerns there. There's some weight issues. And generally weight issues, that's more of a motivation. Are you motivated to play? Are you motivated to get out there on the field? And are you motivated to be in sync with what's going on with your body and what you mean to this team and prioritizing things properly? Doing some research and reading up, it really sounds like he got a big head. He had a great sophomore year. Like, he was outstanding. The kid's a raw talent. Unbelievable talent. Had a huge sophomore year. Came back his junior year, and his head was just too big. And it sounds like his dad was like, look, you got to figure things out. You got to prioritize your life. Took some time off, came back. Sounds like things are a little bit better. Weight's still a little bit of an issue. He's coming in at about 265. I understand they want him somewhere closer to 230, 235. So we'll see how it works. Maybe he can play with that weight. I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
But that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I guess we go back and forth, but in the end, talent wins. And Bob Quinn is not going to sacrifice his future on not drafting the most talented individuals. You can deal with a certain level of problems, and I think what these managers and general managers believe is, look, if we bring him into our culture, if we have a good culture, then he'll conform. And if he doesn't, boom, they'll cut him fast. And I do believe that's the philosophy that Bob Quinn's going to take. Now, before we get out of here, R.J. White, CBS Sports, 2-round mock draft. I liked it. I like the fact that these mock drafts that are coming out, I like the fact that they're kind of homing in a little bit on offense, defense, really getting us a glimpse of some talented individuals that could fit here with the Detroit Lions. What'd you make of R.J. White's CBS Sports mock draft this go-round?
It's okay. I'm not a huge fan of their first-round pick that he has the Lions taking, but I'm not upset with this. All right, so with guys on the board like Rashad Evans, Harold Landry, and Darius Geis still on the board in his first round, your Detroit Lions take cornerback from Iowa, Josh Jackson. And he goes on to say the Lions re-signed Nevin Lawson, and they brought in Deshaun Shield, but neither should prevent them from selecting a potential starter at a position across from Darius Slay should the right opportunity present itself. Matt Patricia gets a ball hawk with this pick who led the nation in interceptions last year. While I agree with all that, don't you have Tease Tabor? Didn't you invest a second-round pick in Tease Tabor last year? Arden Key, the guy who we were just talking about. Arden Key ends up going in the second round to the Chicago Bears at 39. This is what they said about him. Key has the talents of a top 10 pick, but has struggled in 2017 and brings off-field red flags. Even so, expect a team to gamble on his upside on day 2. Going down to your Detroit Lions, who are picking at 51. Now, Mo Hurst goes at 50, so if you're looking for your D tackle, he's gone. Your D tackle from Michigan, he's gone. But they end up taking Sony Michel, running back out of Georgia. The Lions signed LeGarrette Blount, but that shouldn't prevent them from drafting a potential long-term answer at that position. Now, I like Sony Michel. He's a guy who, if you're going to take a running back in the second round, he's the guy who I want. I'm not sure if Josh Jackson does it for me. I'm not really sure about that. That's kind of the one where I'm like, but that second-round pick I'm cool with. So that's where everything's kind of pointing right now. We'll see what happens. Look, make no bones about it. Your Detroit Lions, they're taking a running back in this draft.
And a tight end?
They'll probably be taking a tight end too. But if you're taking a tight end, I'm thinking 4th round.
Yeah, later on.
So somebody with some upside.
I can't wait for the draft, man. I'm kind of getting antsy a little bit, getting ready for football. Now that college basketball is over, we got the Tigers, Wings, Pistons. They're not doing a whole heck of a lot, but basically they're on their quest for the number one pick, and that's all. That's all basically. It's kind of funny with those teams that every time they win, now people are getting pissed. And those three teams, it's kind of funny. There's got to be a way to kind of describe it, but those three teams basically their quest is just for the number one pick. Period. That's where they're at. That's where they're at. And the Lions are the team.
Why they're out there trying to win? I don't get it.
The Lions are the team right now. That's it. The Lions in college sports. That's it now for the podcast in terms of talking about success. Everything else is talking about rebuilds and things like that in terms of the organizations. But hey, look, in the end, we got to get at least a little bit ahead. And Michigan gave everybody a chance to kind of have that excitement. It was nice to be at the bar. It was a nice vibe. Everyone was kind of excited. But in the end, it was ultimate disappointment. But hey, you can't get the ultimate thrill unless you're in the big dance. And so it looks like the college sports are going to bring the fans here a lot of happiness going forward. And I think that's where it's at. Unfortunately, hate to say it, but look, we'll be here to talk about it. Great podcast. Thanks again to Nathaniel McClure. Always enjoy the 90 minutes with you, cuz it was fun. I wish we had more time, man. It was a really fun podcast. I liked it.
We need to get a show.
Tekken Warrior.
That's right. Tekken
Doc
Warrior.
and Jock, Tekken Warrior. All right, let's get out of here. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Stay with us. Maybe in the future, Doc, Tekken Warrior.
Go Red Wings. Keep losing.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me. They tell me things that I will do. They show me things I'll do. They talk to me.